Hello, this is Harboring Light. I'm Mary. I give a conservative take about the world around me. So my social media links will be provided for you along with my email, my Substack, and also buy me a coffee. You enjoy my content, whether it be my podcast or my writings on Substack, feel free to support me on Buy Me a Coffee. It would be greatly appreciated. So audio platforms, I'm on Audible, Amazon Music, Spotify for podcasters, Overcast, Pocket Cast, Pandora, iHeartRadio. And I'm looking to grow to where you enjoy your podcast. I'm definitely on that. So this episode is about the artists I think relay as far as musical style and the emotional displays and the emotional representation as far as the message and music of Odetta. I'm going to talk about Erykah Badu, Billie Holiday, and Chicago. All right, so let's get into it. Okay, so also to add on to that, I'm going to dig further deep into the background of Odetta and her musical background, that is. I like to talk about, and I'll elaborate more and go back, resurface back to what I'm saying about this as far as why I think these particular artists relay to Odetta's style of performing and then her style of music. So, Erykah Badu, Billie Holiday, and Chicago. So, let's start out with Erykah Badu. I remember when I first heard Erykah Badu, particularly, being a 90s kid, that is, when I heard On and On. The way, when you're a child, you hear things and you're like, oh, okay, that's different. And it's something, and how I think it stands to say with a musician. If children can take notice of your music and listen and hear it and like it, there's something to say about that. So, as I got older and started to listen to Erykah Badu's music, the way that she would speak about things, it's as if she was, and she's still performing, but particularly with her earlier music, as if you're sitting down in a coffee house and you're hearing a poet speak, and with the jazz infused into it and the blues, and then just some subtle pop. I think it was really, sorry about that. It was well crafted into, it took you on a journey of listening to speaking and addressing what we face on a day-to-day, well, particularly with females, where it be, even though she happens to be an African American, I think a lot of people can relate to that. For instance, on and on the song, from what I understand, how you notice things in life, they repeat in circles, and you wonder why that is. So, and then it makes you question the philosophical, that where that is where we stand as people, as individuals, and then in the spiritual aspect of that. So when she says the intellects may not believe in God, but they fear us just the same. So to me, it's kind of like she's saying it's an oxymoron that you're intelligent, but you don't see the spirituality of a higher being, that there's more than us, than just humans. And she's seeing the secular pattern of that, how what happens when you only rely on yourself, and how it breaks you down. And also how she says that, I think I need a cup of tea. And, it's as if she is reflecting, thinking again about the next patterns that she sees in life. And so Billie Holiday, the way that she would address things, it was very, very emotionally heartfelt, but soothing at the same time. And I'm gonna go into more details about her songs and everything, and along with Erykah Badu in Chicago. But needless to say, for a prime example of this, so it was an ad, a high-end fragrance ad in the early 2000s that I'm recalling. I think it was Chanel or Dior, I'm not quite sure. But they used her song in that particular ad to showcase the longing and the relief that it is to be with your love. And the way that they infused that song into this ad, I think it really drives home the pathos of feeling that emotion. And that's really something to say about that. And so Chicago, I'm getting into my thoughts on this, and then get into more about the background with Odetta, with her musical background. It was, even when they started out, and they would use it. It's just masterful how they used live sort of orchestra of musicians to play, to to not offset, but to amplify, that's the better term to say, of what they are addressing and talking about in their music. So it's almost as if, to me, this is my point of view about it, as if they're using all of these different type of experiments with music, using it as a background for painting a scene in a way that a cinematographer would do, or so on and so forth. For instance, Saturday in the Park, having that those horns, the brass, and supplementing that with the guitar and the music, with the singing, you could really feel what it's like to sit in a park on a Saturday and watch all these people go by, and how people interact with one another, and what it's like to have that experience of being in a park and enjoying the outdoors. It's really something to say about that. And then in the in the 80s, Hard Habit to Break, for instance, and then Look Away, and so many other countless songs, how they didn't use a live orchestra as much, not really. It was more studio recording and music videos and all that. The vocal ranges between changing different lead men and singers, Peter Cetera, I believe, and then going in after he moved on to other things, having different singers, the range and styles of what they were doing, it really brought to light all the different aspects of heartbreak and the aspects of the recollection of being in love and owning in love, and the pain and the darkness of not having love, and the embarrassment of being overwhelmed by love and feeling like you made a mistake. It's really amplified in how I think it was very skillful to have these leading men choose to tone their message in particular manner so you can understand that and hear that and experience that. All right, so here we go. Let's dive into the music, of the musical background of Odetta. Odetta's perception of the folk tradition, in contrast, offered a window into the American Black experience, one characterized by unjust conditions of forced labor and confinement, from which a large and varied repertoire of labor songs and spirituals grew. These songs reflected not only tragedy, but, as Odetta's album Linear Notes suggests, the richness and complexity of her own heritage. Odetta also realized that as a classical performer, she was expected to follow in the footsteps of artists who preceded her, noted as to become the next Marian Anderson. This path irritated her fiercely independent streak. Odetta had no desire to mimic other artists, but faced significant challenges when seeking to forge her own artistic persona in the classical world. As a Black woman artist, opportunities would be scarce, and artistic experimentation looked upon with suspicion. In addition, another more inward obstacle stood in the way of a classical career. As a young woman, Odetta has described herself as grappling with these intense emotions of frustration and fury, and of anger, venom, and hatred towards everyone else and everything else, but mostly important perhaps at herself. Okay, excuse me. Okay, to note, Marian Anderson was an American singer who was one of the finest, as noted, contraltos of her time. Her significance of this, onto this, her 1939 Easter Sunday concert on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial after being denied the right to sing at Constitution Hall because of her race became one of the defining moments of the Civil Rights Movement. And also to add on, contralto is a type of classical female singing voice whose vocal range is the lowest female voice type. The contralto's vocal range is fairly rare, similar to the mezzo-soprano and almost identical to that of a contender, I believe the pronunciation of that, typically between F below middle C and the second F below middle C. Although at the extremes, some voices or vocals can reach the D below middle C, or the second B above middle C. The contralto voice type is generally divided into contralta lyrics and dramatic contralto. Growing up and amid racial and cultural formations in which her blackness and her womanhood defined norms for women seeking public careers in music, at the start of Odetta's career, she was exceedingly self-conscious about her appearance and racist attitudes she experienced as a performer. A handsome woman with a full figure, according to concert reviewers, she felt disadvantaged by a large frame, which did not meet idealized norms of a petite white body type in conventional feminine women. She was at one point terrified of and enraged at her audience, usually white concert goers, many of whom did not hesitate to demand encores with a presumptuation that she perceived to operate racial grounds. But when she sang songs from the African American folk tradition, she says that she effectively became the slave, the prisoner, and the impoverished blues man. In her earlier career, she often dressed in long clothing that hid her discomfort with her body. Clothing she felt made her gender neutral. Odetta became fixated on suppressing aspects of her identity, in that case her physical body, whose nonconformity with formative racial and gender standards shamed her. Ironically, however, Odetta's initial attempts to make herself virtually invisible on stage became the impetuous form which her substantial cultural and political contributions grew. And intent on mimicking the sound, facial expressions, and mannerisms of the personalities her songs spoke about, she performingly connected her audiences with people whose songs and sounds they knew little of, giving an expansion of history, geography, and memory which divided them. Later, Odetta claimed that she found herself through its performative immersions into African American folk songs. It was in this way that folk music constituted her own personal freedom, and Odetta sought to liberate others in a way that she had achieved her inner freedom through contact with the stories and sounds communicated through folk songs. I think it's rather interesting that I'm addressing with Odetta and her means of her restraint against what is perceived to be acceptable as a folk singer. It's interesting how even I'm taking this is from my point of view of looking at this. Even though she had these notations and these discriminations, whether it was with the discrimination it was a parent, and the ones that were on her side. It's really interesting with all of the turmoil of that and everything else. She managed to make a name for herself. And it's, like I was saying, it is ironic that out of her disdain, she was able to be notable in her profession as a folk singer. And it's really something to say about that, how she managed to still find her voice, per se, in the midst of this, even through the adversity of it. And that's something to definitely think about. And when I was mentioning about that earlier in my Monday's episode about separating everything, it's just it's really interesting that she used her disdain and the discrimination in this light in the earlier parts of her career to find herself. And it's unfortunate that she felt that way and that she experienced that, but it's just something to say how she just still withstand, and she managed to be very successful. All right, so let's get on to the other artist. Okay, before I get into the song by Erykah Badu, The Healer, I think it relates to Odetta, is an example of that. I think what she was trying to do, Odetta, in her presentation of how she wanted to present to her music, is saying this, that even though I look different, I'm still saying the same message, and that my difference is what sets me apart from everything else, and that makes it seem, to me it makes it more of her way of speaking about things and singing as a folk singer unique. All right, and also linking back to Erykah Badu, what I said about On and On, adding on to, I think it's an oxymoron with saying that, which relates to the ever-presence of what she is saying as one of the themes in this song about religion. But this is a different example of saying that even though the intellects don't believe in it, they fear it's just the same. So it's interesting that she's pointing out, you don't believe in something, but yet you fear it. So how does that make sense? All right. So, here we go. The Healer, which was part of the album. The New America, I believe the pronunciation of that, part 1, in 2008. In this song, Erykah Badu declares that hip-hop is bigger than religion and it is bigger than the government. She explains to Westworld that she means this both literally and figuratively. Badu explained, I've traveled all over the world, and I'm a student of religion and philosophy, and music and science, and quantum physics, and people, and anthropology, and geology. And in doing that, collecting all this information, I find that everyone prays differently at different times and for different things. But everywhere I go, all over the world, from Japan to Mexico to Africa to Argentina, people nod their head to the snare and the kick of the same kind of way, whether they know the language or not. They feel it and they zone out to it. They become part of the culture of hip-hop. Well, the jury's out on that, with rap. But, there are rap artists that are centered in reality and that speak a higher message. But it's interesting what she's saying, because rap is something you do, but hip-hop is something you live. Rap is only one part of the hip-hop culture. It's the graffiti. It's DJing. It's 2 turntables. It's a microphone. It's the dance. It's the dress. It's the look of that tribe. And there are members of that tribe all over this planet. It's traveled so far and so wide, more than anything. That's what we have in common, and it's bigger than religion. We do not have the same religion. We do not have the same political beliefs, but we have in common, and I've seen it all with my own eyes, and so have others. It can't be denied. Something to think about there. All right, so let's go on to Billie Holiday and God Bless the Child. All right, before I start out talking about God Bless the Child by Billie Holiday, I think it's just ever present how her music really complements the idea of things that we experience in humanity, and this within that the ideas of how we find our way in things. And it's very interesting, this particular song, God Bless the Child. The first time I heard it was this song, was on the show Rock. And the 90s show with that centered around the African American experience of it was a comedy series, and it was interesting because it centered around a guy. I believe they lived in Baltimore, and his wife is a nurse, and he's a garbage man, and the uniqueness of coming together and experiencing the trials and tribulations, the joys and the triumphs in life. And it's interesting that this song was one of the chosen themes for that show, because it's interesting to me, because I think it helps to unify that there is a divine purpose in everything. All right, so let's get into this song. This was written by Billie Holiday with her frequent collaborator Arthur Herzog in 1941. She wrote the lyrics after an argument with her mother, Sadie, over financial matters. Just a few years earlier, Holiday had loaned her mom thousands of dollars to open a restaurant, and when she found herself in need of cash, Sadie declined to lend her any money. Yes, sweetheart. In her autobiography, Lady Sings the Blues, Holiday recalled how, in the course of the road, she uttered the proverb, "God bless the child that got his own." The singer's anger over the incident led her to turn that line into a starting point for this song. The song was recorded on May 9, 1941 in New York. Holiday was joined by Eddie Haywood and his orchestra, who had backed her on several other occasions. Holiday opens the song with her own interpretation of a biblical observation: "Them who's got shall get, them who's not shall lose." So the Bible says, but it still is news. The verse that Lady Day was referring to is thought to be, "For everyone who has will be given more, and he will have an abundance. Whoever does not have even what he has will be taken from him." Matthew 25:29. Okay, so before I get into this Chicago song, does anybody really know what time it is? I think that the movie Ferris Bueller's Day Off really is a capsule, so to speak, of the message behind this song. And to add on to this, the reason why I'm using the movie Ferris Bueller's Day Off is interesting how with Chicago, with their song repertoire into the 80s and being in the soundtrack of The Karate Kid, even though these movies are vastly different, I think they still unite in the message of you have to seize every opportunity and every moment in time that you have before it wastes away. And that builds a lot of character. Alright, so here we go. A track from Chicago's first album, this is an example of an early song featuring their horn section. It's also an example of a very cerebral lyric which asks the kind of existential question commonly positioned in the 60s. The song stressed the importance of taking time to appreciate the small pleasures in life instead of rushing from one place to another against the clock. Chicago singer and keyboard player Robert Lamb wrote this song and sang lead. He explained on the Chris Isaak Hour, "I was a teenager walking down the street in Brooklyn, New York, where I grew up. I walked by a movie theater and there was an usher standing outside taking a cigarette break. I said to him, 'Hey man, what time is it?' And he said, 'Does anybody really know what time it is?' I remember that when I was trying to write this sort of Beatle-esque shuffle and just explore the idea of does anybody really know what time it is?" Okay, sweetie. The album version runs 4 minutes and 33 seconds and contains a piano introduced by Robert Lamb that was removed for the single release, which was cut down to 3 minutes and 17 seconds. Lamb would often play the intro when they performed the song live, which can be heard on their Chicago at Carnegie Hall album. The song first appeared in the Chicago Transit Authority album in 1969, but it wasn't released as a single until late 1970, long after their second album had been issued. This is because of Make Me Smile, part of a suite of songs on that second album that the record company edited down for single release. When it became a hit, they learned by chopping down Chicago's songs a bit, they could find a home among popular tunes on AM radio. Does anybody really know what time it is? Its shortened form reached its peak of number 7 the first week of 1971. Alright, so this reaches the end of the Hovering Light, and on Friday I'm going to talk about Odetta's songs and give my thoughts and go in depth about that. And also give a plug for the next artist that I'm going to talk about on Monday. And of course, questions, comments, concerns, feedback is greatly appreciated and encouraged. So please reach out to me, whether it be social media, my ex. A link will be provided, along with some. I periodically use mine, but email is preferred. And you can also find me and connect with me on Substack too. And also, I'm working on that as do extended content on Buy Me a Coffee. And then also, again, you enjoy my content, whether it be writing or my podcast, feel free to support me on Buy Me a Coffee. Tune in, turn up, and definitely take care. Bye-bye now.